Spoke with Pastor Tyler last evening and heard that how well things are going. 27 students and I think 9 leaders up there, and shared the gospel with a lot of people. And so I told him on the phone, and it's true, I said everything we do as a church, so much of it is a covering and so that you can do what you do. I don't know how many junior high ministries actually train their students to share their faith, not in a classroom, but up in the middle of a town. And they said they're out sharing in Prescott in the square, and by the time they get to one end, the entire crowd has changed. So they just head straight through another time, and then they go through another time. And so they have a deal where if they have a really bad visit, they had a couple mean people, and they get excited about it because that means they get ice cream. So if anyone's really rude to them, they're like, yes! Man, Pastor Tyler's got that figured out, doesn't he? That is really smart. Welcome online. Thank you for participating with us. And Michelle, as usual, is online with you and kind of talking and interacting. Check in with her in your comments below if there's anything you need or want or prayer or whatever it is. Just check in with her. She would be happy to chat with you. Let me pray as we look into God's Word. Heavenly Father, thank you for the privilege of being here. Thank you for Pastor Tyler and that amazing team. Those students, we love them. I see in your word a great encouragement that there is no temptation taken us but which is common, and that you are faithful and you will not allow us to be tempted beyond which we're able, and with the temptation provide a way to escape. Thank you. What an encouragement. And for some today, that might be it. Whatever struggle they're facing of sin, they can overcome through you and your power of Jesus Christ. So we pray to that end. Now as we look into your word, give us wisdom, please, as we wrap up this amazing prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. Philippians 2 is the text we're probably going to start in, I think. We're examining the Lord's Prayer and deepening our prayer life, and especially being able to come to know God better through this prayer. Perhaps you've discovered the depth of this great prayer and how you can use it every day of your life. I hope that's true. Tertullian, 1800 years ago, said, "The Lord's Prayer is a summary of the whole gospel." That's a beautiful statement. Early texts do not have this ending that we're speaking to today. Yours is the kingdom and the power and glory forever. Amen. The King James included it, but most agree today that that was probably added on, kind of to round it off. It's fully and completely biblical in its statement, but whether or not it was in the original text is hard to know. One funny statement that I read was, by adding and having this phrase, which half Bible translations have this phrase, half do not. One said, it really is a nice ending that we're not ending with evil. And I went, oh yeah, that is true. Deliver us from evil. All right, kids, let's go to bed. So I think that's kind of fun that it's deliver us from evil or the evil one. But then it's for yours is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen. And it's a rehashing of that first part and brings almost like bookends to the statements on both sides. One of the beautiful things about the Lord's Prayer is that it unites all Christian groups. And whether you're Catholic or Protestant or Eastern Orthodox, everybody uses it. Everybody recognizes this. This is the only time they said, teach us, that we know of. They said, teach us to pray. And he said, well, then pray like this. and gave us this example. Is it to be prayed verbatim? Well, I think the answer is, of course, yes. But is that what it was only for? No, of course not. It's a wonderful template for us to see the general movement and the general topics of prayer. And I'll tell you still, and I hate to admit it, there are still times that I'll sit down to pray, and I know I'm not supposed to judge my own prayers, and I'm not supposed to judge anyone's prayers, but if I were to judge, I say some pretty stupid things. I mean, we're going to bed, and just because of my mind, I'm like, oh, and thank you for this food. And I'm like, well, I'm kneeling next to the bed. There really isn't any food right here. I mean, I have some snacks under the bed. I'll be honest with you, because we're all the same in that. I want sour cream and onion potato chips. So I know how to get them from under the bed. But that's not really what I'm saying. And my mind just goes, and there's an element of that that's healthy, that we should be able to say whatever we want to say. It's like a little kid talking to his parents. And they say the funniest things. And sometimes they don't make sense. And the parent doesn't get upset with that. They go, you are so cute. You're so cute. You say the dumbest things. But there is that point in which, right, it's the balance that we say, no, I also want to grow in my understanding of God and grow in my understanding of prayer. And this is one that he gave us as an example of how to pray. So it is, as I mentioned, about half of Bible translations include the doxology, the benediction. It's just as the prayer began with that beautiful text, hallowed be your name, your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And then it's the requests and the petitions, and then it rounds off at the end. But yours, it's a statement of possession. Yours is the kingdom. You possess the kingdom and the power and glory forever. Well, I'm going to tell you right off the bat, that is present tense. And somehow we can lack a theological understanding that we're not waiting for that day in which he's going to be king and in charge. We're not waiting for that day. He is king and he's in charge today. And that's really important for us. Oh, your kingdom come. I pray that it might, because I'm struggling. He goes, might. He is in total control today. His kingdom, his power, and his glory forever. He's never lost control. And it's that statement in our own lives as we end this beautiful prayer that we speak of those possessions of his, that yours is the kingdom. I know the court case is very challenging for you, and you're not sure what's going to happen with it. It's okay. He does. It's going to be all right. Is it going to go the way you want it to go? Oh, I don't know. I'm just going to guess. No. Right? I mean, that's just because his ways are so much higher. We would mess things up so fast. His is the kingdom and the power and the glory. Present, right now. And this prayer doesn't simply belong in a liturgical setting where we say it together in here. It belongs in your bedroom and in your car. It belongs in your shower. That's where life is happening. Oh, I think it's really important that the concept of bringing attention and honor to his kingdom and power and glory corporately is very, very important. But we're doing this in here corporately so that we can go out and more successfully do it alone. In your car. and the emotion of it. There's an emotion and a movement to this. And it needs to embrace your emotion. Your emotion possibly of tears, of joy, of uncertainty. It's real life. We don't have to play. We don't have to pretend. We could read this wonderful prayer and then read it so much that we can quote it without looking. Isn't that awesome? And we can do that with our own emotion. And we can feel that and allow it to become in our heart as part of our prayer. So look at the three possessions. The one is kingdom. Yours is the kingdom. It's a fundamental meaning that he is king. This is why we can ask him for daily bread and we can ask for forgiveness. This is the reason why we can make the petitions that we make. This is so important because life can be really difficult. And we need a king. A president isn't going to do it. Right? And if Jesus were president, I'm not sure he could do it. Because they have these huge houses of people that they have to work through in the branches. Because the greatest form of government, I think we all know, is a theocracy. It is where God is king. He doesn't consult anybody. He makes decisions, and they're always right. They're always beautiful. But we don't live in that today. I read that between 1993 and the year 2000, so 7 years, over 500,000 people starved to death in North Korea. Oh, this is horrible. Oh, that's what we know, right? We know it's worse. I recently read something of North Korea that I have never heard of. If you're a political dissenter, you will go into labor for your life, okay? You're going to have to go to these work labor camps for life. I thought, oh yeah, I've heard of that. Oh, that's horrible. And they went, no. 3 generations. And I'm like, oh. So it's your kid and your grandkid will go as well. This is horrible stuff going on in the world today. And truthfully, you're facing some really difficult things. And you and I need to be consumed with the idea, the truth, that we have a king and we live within that kingdom and he is in charge. The great passage in Philippians 2, it's 9 and 10. After being found in human form, Jesus humbled himself by becoming obedient to the point of death, even the death of the cross. Therefore, God has highly exalted him and bestowed on him the name that is above every name, so that the name of Jesus, every knee shall bow in heaven and on earth and under the earth, and every tongue confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. Psalm 103, the Lord has established his throne in the heavens, and his kingdom rules over all. So I kicked back at my desk and was trying to think. I have this idea that the text says that it's his kingdom. It's a statement of possession. Yours is the kingdom. You have the kingdom. So you are king. It is your kingdom. And I thought, it's so abstract. So I started thinking historically, kingdoms, like old school kingdoms, where even Israel, they would come from all over the kingdom to get a moment with the king. Why do they do that? Because if they can get the king to make a decision, to get attention from the king, it's over. It's done. Because that's all you have to do is talk to him. So there's another great kingdom. It's in the book or the movie, Emperor's New Groove. You guys really know of that? That's like my favorite ever. Cusco, right? Let's see, what was the little humble village guy's name? Pacha. Wow. That is awesome. That was back in 2000. You have great memory for things like that. That's really good. I'm impressed. It's the greatest movie ever. So the idea was he made his way in because Cusco was going to build his summer palace right on top of a village. And so they didn't think that was a good idea, so they go, and if they can get a moment with Emperor Cusco, it could change everything. That's all it takes. Why then don't we, and I'm going to include myself 100% in this, then why don't we find more calm in the fact that we have gone to the king? We just went to the king. And we laid out our request in such a way as to say, but you know better. You have, as a king, an earthly king, counselors from all over the place. We have a king who is, in essence, all wisdom, and we go to him. How do we walk away still tense? There is an answer to that. That's not rhetorical. We go away still tense because we are not either believing or understanding who we actually just went to. And this prayer is saying, yours is the kingdom. I am merely a humble servant. And yours is the power. Colossians 1. He is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. For by him all things were created in heaven and earth, visible, invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities. All things were created through him and for him, and he is before all things. And in him all things hold together. Colossians 1:18. And he is the head of the body of the church. He is the beginning, the firstborn from the dead, that in everything he might be preeminent. Wow. He's created it all. I think that was a point that was well made last week by Pastor Stephen. Was we have God and we have Satan, and somehow we think there's a battle between the two of them. There is no battle between the two of them. Satan is created. He's not in the ballpark. And the power that God and his son Jesus Christ have. Stephen Hawking was one of the great geniuses of our age. It was said that Dr. Hawking had a greater grasp on the power of the universe than anybody. There are two puzzles that eluded his great mind. And asked what he thought about most during the day. What consumes you? What's confusing to you? And he said, women. He said, they are a complete mystery. Is that awesome? He is a genius. The second puzzle that eluded him, although Professor Hawking understood so much of the power of the universe, he did not understand the power of God. He dismissed faith, saying this is a fairy story that people who are afraid of the dark. What a contrast. that we have the early church and the teachings of the scriptures that disagree with that. And to take and become a genius over creation and miss the power and the understanding of the Creator. Your divorce and the abuse that you endured, your loss or dissatisfaction in work, your impossible situation that maybe you created and maybe it was created for you. God is all-powerful, and He is working things for your good and for His good. He is above you. He doesn't think like you. He's not limited like you and like me. We think that the power of God is somehow we don't have much power, and so He has so much more. That's not true. It's a totally different level. It's not on the same scale. That's the difference of the words quantitative and qualitative. He is not quantity better and more powerful than you. He is in quality better and more powerful than you. Totally different. Totally above. And when we say holy, 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 we're saying totally separate, totally above, beyond, and other. You are just nowhere near like us. And He goes, now you're getting close. Had a situation this week that was a little unusual. There was abuse involved in it, and therefore denial and some believing the abuse. The government's involved, psychiatrists are involved, families kind of being broken up, and they're just kind of wanting a little bit of advice of where to go, and I'm like, okay, yeah, wow, this is, in a very short conversation, some kind of heavy stuff. I spoke to a staff person and said, I'm just kind of trying to navigate some of these thoughts. And I'm just trying to get the exact line that she said. Without much hesitation, as I'm describing this horrible situation, the statement was made back. Tell him to keep praying, because that's the greatest power. And of course, I said, well, yeah, sure. Well, there's that. Well, yeah, that first. Yeah, that's important. I said, no, that is it. And yes, we need to navigate the court system or navigate the medical field. We need to navigate through counselors and psychiatrists. There's a lot of great resource out there, and we want to take advantage of it. But if you and I want power, it's the power of God in prayer. It's the greatest tool. It's connecting with Him. And not only does He not necessarily change it, He changes us. And we're okay. Because we're okay? And He goes, yeah, we're okay. Okay, that I don't care about this anymore. Oh, it hurts. But we're okay? He goes, we're okay. I trust you. God smiles and goes, I would if I were you. Right? He goes, that's a good move. Because if you don't want to, you don't have to. You can walk away. He'll let you. Because he's not going to force it. Too much of a gentleman. He's there for those who want His power. The last one is glory. The glory, the shine, the attention, the being set up. The glory is like the manifestation of God. Yours is the manifestation. You're blinding. You're so indescribable. That's who you are. And yet life can be frustrating. And there's anxiety and confusion. And yet to focus on the glory of God. Yours is the glory. Spend me to your glory. And it's like God wants to say to you on that, he goes, yes, that's where you're happiest. It's not because he's an ego that says, yeah, that's right, be spent to my glory. No, it's I get to be spent to his glory, which is how I'm created, and I find myself hitting on all cylinders and feeling right no matter where I am or where I go, because I'm giving him glory. Yours is the glory. It's not to me. There's a fantastic text. It's the single text that most believe was the origin of this phrase that rounds off the Lord's Prayer. And it's 1 Chronicles 29. This is a one verse that seems to say most of it. The rest it's clearly from places, and it's clearly correct. And it's a clear summary of the introduction of the Lord's Prayer. But this passage, 1 Chronicles 29:11. Yours, O Lord, is the greatness and the power and the glory and the victory and the majesty. For all that is in the heavens and in the earth, it's yours. Yours is the kingdom, O Lord, and you are exalted as head above all. Well, I'm going to tell you, you want to go to bed at night saying that over and over? You want to have a comfort about life? This is the idea when we say yours is the kingdom and the power and glory forever. Amen. Out of 1 Chronicles 29:11. John Owen wrote a slew of books in the 1600s in England. And I have never purchased them. Guys will purchase them on their shelves there, and I'll grab one just for fun because I just want to see the fact that it's never been opened. I just want to realize that they're like me. I mean, I knew enough not to spend the money on them. They did because they want this massive set by John Owen. There's several that have become their individual volumes that have been very, very useful. One is called The Glory of Christ, and it's based on the 1 John chapter 3, verse 2 passage, where it says that when we see Jesus, when he appears, and we see him as he is, we will be like him. Okay? When he appears, we will see him. And when we see him, we'll be like him. And the premise of the book is the more we can see the magnificence and the glory of Christ, the more we change. Because this is post-life here. When he appears, physically, we'll get to see him as he is, and we're changed. We're instantly changed. He is so amazing that when we just see him, we become like him. We're changed in a moment. If that's true, that's post this life. If that's true, then go pre that time period and talk about today. The more you and I can see Jesus Christ for who he is, the more we will be like him. That's why we're so dominated in our minds on the glory of Christ and the who he is and the possessions, and we say it's your will and your kingdom and hallowed be your name, and then he wraps it up with then yours possession is the kingdom and the power and glory forever. And the more we see him, The more we're consumed by him, the more he just burns away everything that doesn't fit. That's literally the challenge today and tomorrow. Don't wake up tomorrow and just face your day. You don't want to face your day without seeing Christ, without sitting before his word and listening and saying this wonderful prayer and getting in this mindset. I can see the King this morning. I'm safe in his kingdom, in his power and his glory. There's a story probably every 2 years I'll tell it. And I'm probably going to tell it every 2 years the rest of my life. And part of it is for myself. It was 1975. It was a gathering of journalists, and there was a correspondent by the name of Jacob Needleman. He recounted that as all the journalists got together in kind of crowded room-ish, that there were some light refreshments laid out for them. The journalists were making fun of each other, kind of classic journalist thing. They report on the underbelly of the world. So they're a little cynical, and there's a bit of sarcasm in the room and making fun of everybody else in the room. This day was different. It was July 15th. It was the launch of the Saturn V. The Saturn V is a mission, was specifically the Apollo 17. There was a familiar countdown. Then it was the launch. 36-story rocket. It was the largest, most powerful rocket ever launched. 7.6 million pounds of thrust. It's 60 feet taller than the Statue of Liberty. Actually possesses more power than 85 Hoover Dams. As of this year, the Saturn V remains the tallest, heaviest, most powerful rocket ever built and operational. And it launched. Take a look at this slide. The one on the right is a Russian rocket that attempted 4 launches and it blew up all 4 times. On the left is the Saturn V. 13 launches, never lost a crew member, never lost a payload. 13 launches. But what I actually want you to see is there's a person in between the two of them to give you an idea of size. It launched. The reporters were suddenly blinded by this vast field of orange lights. Their eyes literally could barely handle the intensity. Then, because light was faster than sound, the deafening thunder that shook the very ground they were standing, and then it was gone. The reporter said, no, it was gone. Like, where did that go? That's impossible. Disappeared in the depths of space. 200,000 gallons of fuel with 300,000 gallons of liquid oxygen. Gone. Here's the point. Here's the point of the journalist. He recounted the change in the spirit and attitude in the room. Wisecracks were gone. Mouths were left open. These hardened news reporters were left in a reverence. They were kind to one another, and they were hugging. Awe had taken possession of them, if only for the moment. The cynicism in the church, negativity or disunity, unconfessed sins, wisecracks, the very lack of fear of God, all resulting from the lack of seeing the glory of God. Beholding the wonder of God eliminates negativity and cynicism. We're left in awe, and our faces will show it. Jobs, attitude, music, relationships. Because when we come in contact with the very presence of God, and we live daily to see him for who he is, he changes us. And I believe that a daily use of the Lord's Prayer with a good understanding of what it means can help us to that end.